Hello again. So the weather's turned south on me here in Texas, and it's dropped about 35 degrees just this morning. It's real wet and windy, so when I tried to record this outside, you couldn't hear me at all, even with my fancy microphone. So here I'm back to where I started, doing gear reviews in my kitchen. Today I wanted to show you guys the sleeping pad I chose to go with for my thru hike of the PCT this year, which is the Therm-a-Rest Neo Air XLite. It's not uncommon on trail. A lot of people are using these things, and there's a good reason for it. There's a lot of things that can be said about this inflatable sleeping pad, so I'm just going to start with its packability. So this is the long version. The regular version, which is what you'll see more often than not, measures in at 2.5 inches thick, 20 inches wide, and 72 inches long, I believe. This particular one, being the long, is still 2.5 inches thick, but it's 76 inches long and 25 inches wide. So with this being the wider, longer version, its packed down size comes in at 11 inches long and 4.5 inches in diameter. Still fits very nicely and neatly down inside my light AF curve. Inside the stuff sack, I've got, of course, my sleeping pad. My pillow is also rolled up in my sleeping pad. And I also have a single-person ground sheet for cowboy camping so that I can help protect the inflatable pad. I'm also looking into possibly picking up another addition to this sleeping setup that I'll show here at the end of the video. The XLite is a 3-season pad with an R value of 3.2. Now, if you don't know what R value is, it's a scale that's used to determine the thermal transfer, basically, of a product. So your insulation in your house is going to have an R value. Any insulation in any product at all is going to have an R value. An R value of 3.2 is quite high for an inflatable sleeping pad, or for any sleeping pad. The inflatable sleeping pads are going to have a little higher R value than your foam core pads are. Now, what that means is it's going to insulate you better from a cold ground. So where the ground could be a certain temperature and it's just going to suck all the heat right out of your body if you're laying right on top of it, this pad with a 3.2 R value is going to help keep that from happening. Now, this pack utilizes what the company calls thermal capture technology, utilizing their triangular core matrix. Now, basically all that is a fancy way of saying they've got triangular baffles built into the sleeping pad, and what those triangular baffles do are keep the warm air from your body on top and help it from escaping into the ground, and keep the cold air from the ground from pulling that warm air into it, ultimately pulling the warm air out of your body. Now, this is basically the same principle as any other insulation that you would find in your walls, your ceiling, or your floor if you have a pier and beam home. And the way insulation works is the warm air molecules try to take over the cool air molecules. So if you can slow down the transfer of the warm air molecules taking over the cool air molecules, then you can slow down heat loss from your body. The more airspace between you and the ground, the better the insulation value is going to be, because it has to take the heat from your body, heat up the air, and then start to pull into the ground. So by having those couple layers of air through their triangular core matrix, it slows down the transfer of heat. So basically, Therm-a-Rest has taken the very well-known principle of thermal transfer and applied the principles of slowing down that thermal transfer to its sleeping pad. Now, all inflatable sleeping pads work off this principle. The difference in the Therm-a-Rest and other companies is their core matrix, meaning they have those two levels of triangular baffles that help keep the warm air up, cool air down, so it works pretty well. So moving away from the science lesson, I can personally speak for how warm this thing will keep you. I was in the Ouachita Mountains in Oklahoma a couple months back, and it was about 40 degrees when I went to sleep. I laid down on this thing, didn't think anything of it. I woke up in the morning just before sunrise, and it felt exactly the same inside as it did when I went to sleep, so I just didn't think much of it. When I let the air out of this pad and my body hit the ground, it almost instantly froze. I was so cold when I hit the ground. I looked at my thermometer, and it was 20 degrees inside my tent. So it obviously did its job, keeping the warm air near my body instead of letting the ground take it. Now, you don't have to sacrifice a heavier pad in order to get all of these features from the Therm-a-Rest. This oversized one for my oversized self, it comes in at 1 pound even inside the stuff sack. Now, of course, that doesn't include my pillow or the ground sheet, but the Therm-a-Rest itself, inside the Therm-a-Rest stuff sack, does come in at exactly 1 pound on my digital scale. Now, the reason I decided to go with the long pad instead of the regular, because I originally had the regular and I returned it to REI and purchased the long, is because When I initially was doing my research, I thought that the long was just that. I thought it only added 5 inches and that all the other dimensions stayed the same. Well, I didn't need that extra 5 inches. I'm 6 foot. I fit on a regular pad just fine. But after about 3 or 4 times using it and realizing that my shoulders are 21 inches wide and I was sleeping on a 20-inch wide pad, it was pretty stiff. It was like I had no options of moving. I had to lay just on my back and like kind of tuck my hands down into my shorts in order for them not to fall off onto the ground, or lay on my shoulder, which could get pretty tiring over an entire night without being able to roll around at all. So I got online and started doing some more research, which I probably should have done before I purchased the regular, but I didn't look deep enough into it. I also didn't realize that my shoulders were 21 inches wide until it was too late. But in doing that research, I found out that the long version was not only 5 inches longer, it was 5 inches wider, which was perfect. Having 25 inches width would give me plenty of room to roll around. So, of course, I went back and I picked that one up. Now, I do believe I gained 4 ounces by doing that, but I really didn't care. The fact that it's going to make me sleep so much better at night, I will take that 4 ounces any day. Now, that's not to say that the regular was not comfortable. It was just as comfortable, which is what made me jump on the opportunity for the wider one. This pad is made from a 30D RIP HT nylon. That's on the top and the bottom. So it's a very resilient fabric. It can't withstand punctures just like any other inflatable pad, but it is very durable for what it is. The baffles that I spoke about earlier are a nylon set as well. So given the fact that it's a ripstop style nylon on top, it's a nylon baffles in the middle, and there's 2 layers of these baffles, it is a little bit noisy. I can't speak for any other pads. I've never tried any other pads. I went with this one and loved it, so I went ahead and stuck with it. I don't know if some of the other brands of inflatable sleeping pads have such extensive baffles, or if they don't make quite as much noise, but honestly, this noise doesn't bother me. When I'm done hiking 18 to 22 miles, I really don't mind that that thing's making a little bit of noise. I will lay down on it and pass out, guaranteed. Now, I mentioned before that it's not going to withstand punctures, which is the case for any inflatable pad. You have to be very mindful of where you set your pad, where you set up your shelter. Depending on what shelter you have, be mindful of your ground sheet and what it's capable of withstanding. But that being said, it does come with a couple patches that are very easily used to patch any pinholes that you might get in the pad. I myself have not experienced any punctures, so I haven't had to use that yet, but I have talked to other people that have experienced minor pinholes. They found them, marked them, sealed them up, and it worked just fine. Some of them even just used a little bit of epoxy, and it filled the hole and worked perfect because they didn't bother carrying their patches. I will be carrying my patches just because I'd rather have them and not use them than not have them and be stuck out there with a pad that won't inflate. NeoAir comes equipped with a 2-way screw valve, which is pretty cool. I do wish they would come out with a way to make a 1-way valve like on my Trekology pillow, meaning you blow the air in and it can't come out until you click the button. So, because it's very nice to be able to just blow and be able to take a breath and not worry about any air escaping. Now, I haven't had that problem with filling up the Therm-a-Rest, but when you get to the end and you're trying to make it a little more firm, you do have to be a little more careful about letting your mouth off to get breath, because when you do, it will release air. Now, this valve also does move up and down. I don't necessarily know if that's just because it's a loose thread or if it was designed to do this, but what I've found is I can leave it just a little bit threaded once it's getting more firm, and I can blow into the valve, and when I run out of breath, I can push the valve in just slightly and it'll block the air from coming out, take my breath, and continue. And you only have to do that once or twice, and that just depends on how firm you want it. I actually don't like it to be super, super firm, so I only have to do that once, screw it on, and I'm good to go. I have found that I can inflate this pad to the level I want it to be inflated within 4 minutes, and that really just depends on how tired I am. I am a little bit more worried about the elevation, like up in the High Sierra, on my lung capacity and how long it might take me to fill up this pad, or if it might make me super lightheaded. I may just have to go really slow to fill it up. I'm not really sure. Which brings me back to what I mentioned at the beginning of the video. I mentioned that there was something else that I was going to be looking into for this pad, and I found on REI's website there is a tiny little pump from Therm-a-Rest. It's just a little fan, basically. It runs on 2 AAA batteries, and it attaches to any of their inflatable sleeping pads. It weighs 2.5 ounces and is quite small. It fits in the palm of my hand. They claim that you can fill up your regular, not your long, sleeping pad within 3 minutes. I don't know if it's that good or not. I have read many reviews that say it's a great little pump, but it will only fill up to about 85-90% of firmness before it kind of equalizes pressure. It just can't put any more pressure in because it doesn't have enough power. But they say even with that, they disconnect it, they blow in it a couple extra times, and it's right where they need to be. So 2 breaths over 50 breaths when I'm in the high Sierra may be worth the 2.5 ounces for me. Also, with mine being a long, I probably have to account for about 5 more minutes, or 5 minutes total, but I am going to be about that anyway, I would imagine, after I'm hiking and trying to blow this thing up. So to be able to just set the little pump over there and turn it on and continue setting up camp, getting my gear together, by the time I get all that, it'll be ready for me to give it the couple extra little breaths and be ready to go. Now, I haven't entirely decided upon this yet because that thing is $40 and I don't really know that it's worth the $40, but I'm going to give this thing a couple extra times filling it up, taking it down, and see what I think about it then. I do only have 29 days until I get on the plane, so I better make that decision fairly quickly though. As easy as it is to set up, it's just as easy to take down. And when you're laying on it, you just unscrew the fill valve, let the air come out. A lot of thru hikers that I've watched on YouTube say that's one of the most depressing sounds they've ever heard, is when the night is over and you let the air out of your sleeping pad. So I'll see if I feel the same way here shortly. At least with mine, because it's only been used about 12 times. I've blown it up maybe 15 times. I can still see the lines where it was folded by the factory once it's deflated. So I just fold right over on those 2 lines, roll it from the toe to the head. It squeezes the rest of the air out and it fits right back in the stuff sack like it was when I bought it. Now, as much as I really like this pad, I was doing some research on it to be able to give you guys real names and numbers, and found out that Therm-a-Rest just came out with an entirely new line, and that is the Therm-a-Rest Neo Air uberlite. I don't really necessarily know about the name. It's a super weird name, but I guess when you've already got XLite, you know. At the same exact dimensions, I believe they only have a regular and a long. I don't think they have a short version. It does only have an R value of 2, yet it's considered to be a 4-season sleeping pad. I'm not really sure how they deal with that. I mean, you've got a lower R value, but you're claiming that it can withstand colder weather. So I'm not really sure how they do that. I don't know if it's something to do with the fabric. Maybe the fabric that they're using on that one helps with thermal transfer as well. I'm not really sure. But what I do really like about it is the exact same price, maybe actually $9 more, I think, to get the same long. And it is half the pack size. And I believe it's 12 ounces for the long. I know that the regular is 8.8 ounces. And their advertisement is running it over with the truck. So they're obviously pretty confident in its durability. Now, the reason I say this is unfortunate is because right now they're only on pre-order. Now, they say that the pre-order on REI's website will ship within 30 days. But as I stated, I have 29 days until I get on the plane. My luck, that thing would not ship to my house until I was already on my way to California, and then I'd have to find out how to get it there. Which is not the end of the world, but it would be a little better if I could just run down and pick it up, because I probably would. So if you're not on a time crunch, and this isn't exactly the way you want to go, or maybe you want to go lighter, or maybe you love this thing and you want to upgrade, give that new one a shot, the uberlite. It looks like it's going to be a really awesome pad. So as always, there's a ton of information to go over on all this backpacking gear. I'm sure I missed some few key points. If you're curious about any more specific details on these pads, head over to either Therm-a-Rest.com. They have obviously all the information about any of the sleeping pads or any other products that they carry, or you can go to REI.com and they'll give you a fairly decent rundown of all the specs as well. So if you like all the videos I've been putting up here on YouTube and you want to see more like them, or you just want to follow me along on my PCT adventure, which starts next month, feel free to hit the subscribe button and follow along. Until next time.